Hi friends, it's Crystal here from Homemaking on the Homestead, and today we are going to be making triple berry jam from frozen fruit. This jam is not going to have any pectin added to it, and you don't have to can it. It doesn't make a real huge batch of jam, so you can easily put it in your freezer. If you're feeding enough people, you can just put it in the refrigerator and use it up. Last year, as so many people were in quarantine, I saw things like pectin just fly off the shelves, and it got me thinking that certainly we can make jam like they used to back in the day before pectin was a thing. I've been making jam for 35 years and I have always used Sure-Gel pectin, but aside from just the fact that it became in short supply and it would be a good skill to know how to make jam without pectin, it's also gotten very expensive, which really ups the cost of homemade jam. So I felt like this was a frugal thing to do. You can also can it if you want to. You could make a couple batches. You could probably double it, but I'm not quite sure about that. I will have to look into that more. I am using strawberries, blueberries, and blackberries. The blackberries I picked on my property last year. The strawberries and the blueberries are from Costco. You can buy the bags of fruit individually at your local grocery store. I also saw yesterday when I was out shopping bags of triple berries already mixed, frozen, ready to go, both at my Winco that I shop at and at Costco. So you don't have to worry about not having your own fruit in the freezer. Also, it's great this spring is approaching and the berry season is coming, that if you want to try this, then you can pick the berries or buy them locally and put them in the freezer and wait till you have a convenient time to be able to make the jam. Most all fruit has a natural level of pectin. Berries are kind of low on the low end, and citrus fruits are on the high end. It just means that we may have to cook this a little bit longer to kind of coax out that natural pectin. In order to get to that gel stage and to get that pectin working, you basically need three things. You need heat, you need sugar, and you need some sort of citric acid. For the citric acid, I am going to be adding a couple tablespoons of lemon juice, so that's really easy to do. All right, let's get making some jam. You're not going to need a whole lot of berries, about 6 to 7 cups in total. You will want to slice your strawberries. So I've had these sitting out, defrosting for a little bit so that they'd be soft enough for me to be able to slice. That way I can get a more accurate measurement. So I'm definitely packing them in there and making it a generous, it'll be a generous 2 cups. So to begin with, even though my berries are still partially frozen, I'm going to put them in this pot and turn it on low so that they can start defrosting more and releasing their natural juices. My berries have all defrosted now and they've released a whole lot of wonderful juices. So I'm going to turn the heat up and bring this to a boil. And I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and 1 cup of sugar. I may eventually want to add more sugar if I don't feel like it's sweet enough, but for right now, we're just going to start with 1 cup. I've also put 3 spoons in the freezer so that I can use these after a while to test the gel of my jam. My jam has been boiling for about 5 minutes, so I am going to use my little meat masher and just break up some of this fruit so I don't have huge chunks of fruit. If you like big chunks of fruit in your jam, then you don't need to do this step. I'm going to let this continue to cook for about another half hour on a medium heat so it stays nicely boiling, and then I'm going to start checking it to see if it's gelled. My jam is definitely thickening up now, and it's been about 20 minutes that it's been cooking. It's also starting to get a little bit foamy. I've turned down the heat a little bit so that the jam doesn't stick to the bottom or scorch. I've now turned my burner down to low because it's getting quite thick, and it's been about 35 minutes. I have a little bit sticking on the bottom, so be careful of that and watch it carefully. I think it's getting time to do a test. I kind of wiped off my spoon. I'm going to see how it just flows off. And it's flowing off pretty thick. So now I'm going to get one of the spoons from the freezer. This is my spoon from the freezer. It's ice cold, so it will cool off the jam immediately. And that gives you an idea of how thick it is once it cools down. So that's pretty thick. You can also do the plate test. I've had this in the freezer. I'm going to put them on the plate. And now I'm going to let it cool for a second. Oop. That's hot. Didn't let it cool long enough. But you can see I've kind of used a spoon this time, done that. And it slowly starts coming together, but if it leaves a straight path, that's also another indicator that you've reached a good point. So I'm going to let this cook for about another 5 minutes just to make sure. It's been a couple more minutes, but I decided to try another test that I've seen. Put it on a spatula, and the same thing. If you run a spoon through it and it leaves a trail, and it doesn't, the jam doesn't flow back together, that's an indicator you've reached the gel stage as well. So I think we're about there. I put a blob of jam on a spoon and stuck that in the freezer for a couple of minutes. And as you can see, now that it's cooled down, it is definitely more of a jam consistency. I'm using canning jars for the freezer. You could also use freezer containers. Just remember, if you use a canning jar and you're planning on freezing it, to leave headspace because it will expand. I am so happy with the way this jam turned out. I ended up with 3 little half-pint jars, so that's 3 cups. And I had a little bit more that wasn't quite enough to put in a jar, so we'll just use that. It has cooled down, and I'm going to put mine in the freezer, maybe one in the refrigerator, and then put the other 2 in the freezer. But this was so easy. It probably, from start to finish, took me probably a little over an hour, including the cooking time. Definitely over an hour waiting for the berries to come to a boil and all that. But I think it's just so empowering to know that it is very possible to make jam just like they used to in the old days without having to buy pectin from the grocery store. So I hope you give this a try. I am going to try it again and make a double batch and see how that goes. And I will probably can some of that because that way I have the option of having some on the shelf and some in the freezer. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And if you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, would you consider subscribing? That means a lot to me too. All right, you guys, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.